Good morning, everyone. Please grab a tea, coffee, sit down, make yourselves comfortable. We're just going to get started. So delighted to be here with you this morning at day 2 of the conference. I hope you had a great day yesterday. David and I are going to be talking to you a little bit about digital maturity in the hospice space and what we've seen in digitally mature hospices raising more. So who are we? My name's Rebecca Williams. I'm part of the customer success team here at Blackboard. And David and I are part of a team that looks after our customers to help them use technology to achieve their outcomes. Before joining Blackboard a year ago, I was working in and with charities for the last 6 years or so, so including health, but lots of others, as a direct fundraiser and also as a fundraising data manager, most recently for the National Emergencies Trust Coronavirus Appeal. David, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
So also joined about a year ago to Blackboard. Prior to that was a head of fundraising at international aid charity. I've also worked in the healthcare sector, youth work and faith sectors, and plenty of other things as well. But worked in fundraising and ops management and data management and all of those fun things. So all of those things combined, bringing hopefully some relevant experience to what we talk about.
Thanks, David. If you can't hear us at the back, do just raise your hands. Difficult to tell up here at the front, and I do have a little bit of a cough, so I'll try not to cough too loudly into the microphone. So what are we going to talk to you about this morning? We've got just under half an hour, but some of the things we'd like to cover, we're just going to touch on some of the challenges and priorities that we found from speaking to hospice customers, as well as focusing on a couple of key areas, so building your supporter relationships, how you can build those relationships better, retaining your supporters, and then we're going to go into a little bit more detail about digital maturity. What does that even mean? How can you begin to become a more digitally mature organisation? And then we're just going to round off by talking about harnessing expertise across your organisation to help you on that journey. And then we might have time for a few questions at the end. We'll see how we go, but we'll be here at the stand all day. So first of all, who are we? Who are Blackboard? So Blackboard are a cloud technology provider working exclusively in the social good space. We've been doing that for the last 40 years now. We have 45,000 customers internationally, large and small, across some of the key areas that you can see up on the slide there, including healthcare, individual change agents, grant makers, and many, many others. Just Giving, which you might have heard of, is also part of the Blackboard family. And between us, we have the largest purely philanthropic data set in the world. And we are really, really keen to use that data to provide insights for our customers and the sector in general whenever we have the opportunity. So, where is the hospice sector today? As I said, we have the privilege of working with thousands of organisations globally and a large set of hospice customers as well. So through conversations with them and mine and David's wider philanthropic networks and reports, we've kind of picked out a few key trends. So challenges, but also kind of using that to frame our discussion and think about where the key priority areas for growth might be and how technology can help you achieve your outcomes. So 3 key themes here. None of these will be a surprise to you, I'm sure, but just to set the context for our discussion. So we've seen a huge increase in demand for your services. So quite a staggering figure on there, a projected increase of patients by 2030-31. And alongside that, COVID, but also not caused by COVID, in the years previous as well, we've seen some fragile funding structures in play in the hospice sector and other sectors, but just highlighting that sustainability is really, really key, with statutory funding covering just 37% of the services that you provide as it stands at the moment. And coupled with that, we've seen a decrease in charitable donations, so not across all funding streams, and this certainly doesn't apply to all organisations, but we have seen it in a few key areas. So obviously charity shop income, retail income suffered over COVID, events fundraising's taken a hit, And some of you working in communities and getting a lot of your fundraising income from your local communities has its own challenges working with a smaller supporter base. But it's not all doom and gloom. So we have seen those, a couple of income streams pick up. So events fundraising and charity shop income has seen some healthy growth recently. And all of this has really highlighted the resilience of the sector. And David and I are going to be picking out on a couple of ways that we think technology can help you do more with less in the face of an increased demand for your services and some quite limited resources for many organisations.
Fab. So as Rebecca's just talked about it not all being doom and gloom, I'm going to bring you some doom and gloom. So this is some, I think, genuinely quite interesting statistics that are brought out from the Citizens Advice kind of live data set. This is live data that you can have a look at kind of at any point. It's updated monthly on their kind of state of play. And this is the amount of people seeking support from Citizens Advice. And you can just see that steady growth from 2019 to 20 to 21, and then it rockets this year. What a surprise that we're seeing such a rocket in the cost of living increase, that this is kind of that projected totals not really far off of what they're really facing. And the actual kind of genuine statistics, which I'm sure you are all seeing play out amongst your kind of supporter set and those people who are within your care, this gets to the point where there's about 3 million households in the UK who will not be able to make ends meet at the end of this year. Another 380,000 will have no more than £50 spare cash at the end of the month. So no unexpected bills and certainly no giving capacity, let's say that. And generally speaking, Citizens Advice is expecting to help 57% more people in December than they ever normally do. And some stats that have come out from the CAF survey, so the Charities Aid Foundation survey, which was done in the summer. No doubt many of you will align with some of these statistics in terms of your concerns about the cost of living crisis, your concerns about the increase on your service demand. I used to work for a healthcare organisation where we did have benefits and welfare support, and every single time, and certainly right at the start of COVID, that one person he went from 30 hours a week to nearly 70. You know, that increase on service demand is obviously incredibly high as we see that need for support increasing. And generally, you know, your concerns are going to be about less money being able to be donated to further your cause. You're going to be concerned about the likelihood of survival. How very scary. And I promise you that this isn't all doom and gloom. Actually, what Rebecca said in that in her last section about we've learned that this sector is incredibly resilient. We've come through 2 incredibly difficult years through COVID. We have seen incredible philanthropy shine through and success in that, in all of that. You know, yes, things have been tight. Yes, things have been tough, and it's not been perfect for everyone. But the resilience of this sector is huge. And actually, what we can see, and yes, you know, there are people who may want to reduce their donations to manage their bills in the next 6 months, but there are clever ways that you can maybe support people with that, and I'm happy to talk to you about things that have worked if there's time. Let's see where we get to.
Thanks, David. So a couple of the areas that we wanted to focus on, mainly around the theme of how you can do more and how you can maximise the value of the money that you're putting into fundraising and maximise the return that you're getting from that investment. So we're going to talk a little bit about building supporter relationships. I just want to start off this section by saying the work that you do is incredible and inspiring, and your supporters love the work that you do. It's going to have touched them on a deeply personal level. Some of them will have experienced it firsthand, some of them through family and friends, or just seeing the impact of your work in their local communities. So your stories are really, really impactful. So how can you nurture those supporter relationships best to get the most out of those relationships and keep your supporters close? So here, many of you will be familiar perhaps with this kind of supporter life cycle, all the way through identification to stewardship. We're going to be focusing on the last element here of stewardship, and what are we talking about when we're talking about excellent stewardship? So what we're aiming for is for our supporters to give, and give again, and be lifelong supporters, ideally. Once a supporter, always a supporter. And in many ways, the hardest part is over. You've made an ask of a donor, they've given you a gift, they're now warm to your organisation. So how can you best nurture those relationships? So a couple of areas here, by no means a completely comprehensive list, but just a few key areas of how you can harness data for first-class stewardship. So the first one being tidy banking and thanking. So it sounds super simple, but thanking your donors at the right time and at the right level is a really key part, maybe the cornerstone of excellent stewardship, and really helps build trust with your donors. And modifying your stewardship journeys by gift level and donor type really goes a long way to building those relationships, as does tailoring your content. So gathering data on your donors' preferences, what motivates them, is a key part of those stewardship journeys as well, and making sure that you're communicating with your donors about things that engage them and move them. As well as recording donor and funder preferences. So this applies to trusts and foundations, individuals, all sorts of donor segments, and making sure that you understand what their requirements are, what their preferences are, and building those into your supporter journeys. And you can use technology to track that and automate that in some cases, and David's going to touch a little bit more about that later. So essentially, people give to people. So we're talking a lot about data and technology here, but that's not a means in itself. That has no value in and of itself. So the data that you collect and technology you use is really just to facilitate your own human endeavor and creativity. So the work that you do every day in fundraising, frontline delivery, in care, and everything that you do is really what the magic and what the art is in fundraising. That's what connects with your supporters, and those stories are what generates your fundraising revenue. So what we like to do at Blackboard, and David and I are working with our customers, is try and help them utilize technology to get a better return on their investment, maximize the capacity of teams and the time, money that you put into your fundraising to get a better return. Picture on the left there, you might recognize Deborah James. So she was Bow Babe. She raised an incredible £7 million for her cause, because people really resonated with her and her story and her as a human being. And excuse us. Yes, and Just Giving was the fundraising platform that facilitated that. But it was really her that made the incredible possible. So I'm going to hand back to David now to talk a little bit about retention and how technology can help you retain your supporters.
Super stuff. Yes, excuse me, that was my alarm to take my daughter to school. Obviously not doing that. I hope someone is. Right, so yes, we're talking about retaining our supporters and those people who are within our organisation. Retention is a lot easier than acquisition. We all know that. We've all seen and spoken about that so many times that we're not going to dwell on the statistics or the costs. We just know that that's a thing. But actually what we need to be thinking about and talking about is how can we utilise the technology that we have in place, your CRM, be that a Blackboard solution, be that something else, I don't mind. I'd rather it was a Blackboard solution, of course I would. But being able to utilize those things to build out things like automated journeys. So you can build those automated journeys to free up your time. If you're at the point where you can say and find the appropriate ways to thank people and set different levels, so you can say when when somebody gives a gift between X and Y, they're going to get this journey, and it will automate down that journey. And we don't have to touch that because that's going to happen. And then if we need to have those kind of manual points, anyone who's a big Rob Woods fan, you can build in your wow moments too. But you can find those things and you can build these automated workflows that have these separate journeys on appropriate levels of thanks or involvement or engagement. And finding those points is really, really key to truly understand how you can take all of those preferences and all of those pieces of donor information or your supporters' information. It doesn't always necessarily need to be in a financial ask. We can send people down a supporter-related, someone who's been through your care, can go into an automated journey too. It's just as valuable and just as important. But utilising those things across your organisation through care, through fundraising, and I've seen that myself. And utilising someone who's been through care who may not want to give right now, but if we can truly support them now, then maybe they'll consider us for a legacy at one point. If we can truly understand and support them and engage them in the areas that they're most interested in talking with us, then excellent. And if we can automate that stuff, then that's going to make our lives easier, because we're not spending weeks on pressing buttons and sending emails ourselves and copying and changing, just using what's there. And truly inclusive stewardship, and I'm using a fundraising example because, I'm a fundraiser still at heart. But, you can relate and pull some of this to your own kind of relevance if you just want to talk supporter care. But generally speaking, most fundraisers will use these top 3 pieces of fundraising data to figure out how to send their next campaign. And that's good, that's helpful, but it's not going to give you the most success in doing that. And actually what you can do is look at the rest of the iceberg underneath the water, what lives within your database that's going to help you to figure out who are the people who are most likely to support us for a certain campaign. What are their likes, what are their preferences, how much have they given in a lifetime? And there are certain ways in which you can utilize your technology through what's in existence, through additional support, through additional tools, to understand that propensity of every single person to be a success in certain things. And so you can learn how to refine a 3,000 person mailing campaign down to 300 and still get the same return or better, in theory. And it does happen, and it has happened, and we've got stories where it has happened, so I can tell you about those if you come see me later. There you go, there's your little hook. Come see me. So truly understanding all of this stuff, to be truly intelligent with your data, can make a really smart, segmented fundraising, supporter-led campaign. And yeah, it will save you time, trust me. I've been through let's put 5,000 envelopes in the post and see what happens. And I've been through here's a tailored campaign that goes to 400 people. And I know what I preferred. So truly understanding those things is really key. And so what does digital maturity look like? A big thing that we've been talking about within Blackboard is about digital maturity. In our Status of UK fundraising report that we did this year, we have a section on digital maturity, which talks about where did the leaders and fundraisers in their organisations consider themselves to be in terms of a digitally mature organisation. And I think probably most of you would not be surprised when you look at these statistics in terms of people understand the value, and they understand the importance, and they understand the worth of technology and how you can utilise it. But not so many of those people are actually investing properly in it or saying that they really feel like they're getting the most out of it. That's not necessarily going to surprise you, and neither will these statistics either. We understand how it can help us, we understand what the value is, but we're not sure how to get the most out of it. Now the joy is, and here's my little customer success plug for you, if you're a Blackboard customer, you get to speak to us, and we're the people who can bring those things to life for you. And so to be able to invest in customer success, and we're a free service that exists within your Blackboard subscription, people who have utilised systems and know how to bring those things to life, then yeah, we're here to help you to do those things. But investing in your digital success, if you can invest in them and you can bring that last statistic up of we get the most out of our tech, if we can bring that up, that's going to be the thing that's going to help you to realistically succeed, to understand how to automate your journeys, to understand how to be tidy and effective and efficient in your thanking and banking and storing your donor preferences, in taking things like the gift aid gap. And if you use Just Giving, you'll be interested, if you don't already know, that there's the Swift aid integration, which means that you can take 7 years worth of gift aid declarations and store that, and you can close the gift aid gap. Anyone know how much gift aid was unclaimed last year? Stab in the dark. Who wants to be bold? You'll be surprised. Oh, it's not quite that much. Dang. It was £564 million. That's a lot of money that the government has just not given out. And every single person in this organisation, in this room, I'm sure, could tell me someone that they know hasn't got a gift aid declaration against their name. And you know that you could claim it. So being able to utilise things like the Just Giving and Just Giving's integration into Razor's Edge, how we can utilise the Swift aid integration to claim and store all of that information is going to be valuable, incredibly, in making sure that those little pieces all add up. So yes, what does digital maturity look like? It looks like some of these things, all those things that we've talked about, being able to take all of that data and truly segment it into a smart place so you truly understand who's who, what's what. Look at all those phones, that's exciting. Automating your journeys, taking the legwork out of the hard things that you're doing. If you can build that journey where you get smart, intelligent, donor-focused, supporter-focused journeys, you can do that and take it all away from you and just come in for those wow moments. Excellent. And live reporting to truly, to understand what's successful, what's not, what's working, what's not, building out your dashboards and tracking those things. And benchmarking to see where you're at against other organizations. Again, Blackboard plug for you. But benchmarking tools within Blackboard, within Razor's Edge, to see where you're performing against other organizations of the same size, and how successful those things are. Those things are always going to be helpful in helping you tailor your supporter journeys. I'm going to move over.
Thanks, David.
Over to you, Rebecca.
Super. So we have just over 7 minutes left. So we just want to wrap up by talking about, so we've talked a lot about digital maturity. So essentially using technology across your organization more widely and better. But how can you do that, and how can you harness expertise across your organization to help you get there? So we know that we have some CEOs in the audience, some directors of fundraising and other departments, also members of fundraising teams and other frontline workers in the audience. So whoever you are, collaboration and communication is really key. So from speaking with our contacts across the sector and sector leaders, that's something that really comes through strongly. So primarily we're talking about fundraising and data teams working together to ensure that the organizational strategy is at the heart of your technology project. So you want the technical expertise of the data team, but you also want the strategic overarching picture from the fundraising team, and you need those together to really help you keep your technology projects close to your organizational strategies and to your mission. For those of you that are CEOs or other leaders in the room, what is your role? Technology projects can be enormous, quite overwhelming. It can be hard to know how to empower your teams to get there. We speak to sector leaders across causes, and a couple of things that have come out that some of them have found useful in thinking about their roles are thinking about yourselves as the conductor of change. So bringing together cross-departmental expertise across teams together to work together in harmony, and to empower your teams to try new things, to innovate, to be confident, to be allowed to make mistakes. Technology projects and digital transformation projects are really just as much a cultural shift as they are a technological advancement. So that is really a really key part of your role as a leader. And the other is being an advocate, not an expert. So advocating for digital transformation is really, really key. We've seen that having that at the senior leadership level is essential, but you don't need a great deal of technical expertise. You don't need to go and brush up your Razor's Edge skills yourself, but just to advocate for those that have those expertise in the teams, for those that are leading those projects, and just make sure that you're being vocal and backing them, and keeping fundraising as well at the heart of those projects. So I won't read the whole quote, I'll let you read it in your own time, but this is from one of the charities that contributed to the Status of UK fundraising report, speaking about collaboration. So this kind of collaboration also extends past data and fundraising, and also to fundraising and frontline workers, to ensure that you're making the most out of your fundraising. So this is someone from a fundraising team talking about the value of being able to go to different teams across the organisation and talk about fundraising. But this very much works both ways. So for fundraisers to be able to share that overarching picture and what you're working towards with other teams can be really useful for them, but also really useful for fundraising teams to meet with frontline workers, to go on site visits, to take coffee mornings, whatever works for your organisation, but to keep them close to your service delivery and the care that you're giving every day, because that's what you're all there for, and that's why supporters are buying into your organisation. So that's inevitably going to come through in their conversations with donors and in the communications that you're sending out. So just to wrap up, As David and I have already said, the work that you're doing every day is incredible and inspirational, and the way that we see cloud technology is being a key enabler in maximising what you can do. So by collecting the right data, so we've just touched on a few kind of examples of that today, storing that data in the right way, and using it to drive your strategy going forward. Keeping that data healthy can be a mammoth task, but an important one, because the data you get out is only as good as the data you put in. And then using that data to inform your strategy going forward, so being able to look at what worked really well, what didn't work so well, and adapting your strategy based on those insights is really key to being able to do more with less and being able to maximise your fundraising with some of your limited resources and in a tough climate. So we just want to say thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. If you have any questions, we do have about 3 minutes, so please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll be at the Blackboard stand all day today and tomorrow. So please come and chat to us. Email address is there. Please feel free to reach out to us with anything at all. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Oh.
I just want to check. I'm not certain I know the definition of digital maturity.
Yeah.
Is there one?
Good question. So it is a bit of a nebulous.
So yes, the question was is not being certain on the clearest definition of digital maturity, if there really is one.
Good question, and it is a little bit of a nebulous term and a little bit of a buzzword, we'll admit, that you hear a lot across the sector. I mean, essentially, it just means using technology as widely as possible across your organisation. So thinking about where you're doing something manually and where you might be able to use technology to help you do that better, or automate that process, or integrate across systems. David, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think certainly understanding, and again, forgive us for sometimes using kind of interesting terms. Ecosystems is one that I tend to use quite a lot. So understanding all of the tools that you use. I can't remember if it was in the Status of UK fundraising report or if it was in something else that I read recently, but there was a stat that said that most organisations, your average organisation, will use at least 6 different pieces of software in the way that they operate. The majority of those will not be interconnected, but the majority of them could be. So how can you get them talking to each other to automate, to do those things that we're doing manually, of export this data set and open up the spreadsheet and then have a little manipulation, make sure the columns are right, and then save it as a CSV again, and then put it into the other system, and then hope that it's all imported properly, and then fix the things that have gone wrong because it didn't import properly. Getting, something just boop, boop, done is great. So to be able to utilise those and understand all of those things, not all of it's obviously going to be possible, not all of it you're going to necessarily want to do, but to find those points where you're going to want to be able to do those things, to bring that data to start talking to each other. Like, for example, you're just giving information, and if you've got Blackboard Razor's Edge, for example, well, you could automate the connection between those two, and you don't have to do the let's export the CSV and let's manipulate the data and let's manually upload and import each piece. So finding those pieces where you can utilise technology. It is nebula, it isn't the clearest term, but it's just I guess understanding and learning what we can use. And we do it every day. We've adapted from hailing taxis to clicking a button on Uber. We've adapted to going to Blockbuster to going to Netflix. We've done all of those things in our lives. It's just understanding how we can draw that into our operational stuff.
Yes, lady in there.
Yes.
I wondered what advice you give for people who are concerned about leaving a whole tranche of donors behind who aren't digitally enabled. What would you advise?
Good. For anyone who didn't hear, so advice for potentially leaving the less digitally mature audience behind. That's really interesting. I don't know if you have thoughts on that. I do. I have a couple. I do have a couple. Because what we're talking about is how we enable technology internally, and it's not necessarily about closing off the doors to those channels that are always inevitably very successful. People still like to get handwritten letters, and some people still like to send in checks. We're not saying that those things aren't the ways that we just doesn't happen anymore because we're entirely digital. No, that doesn't happen. But it's how can we utilise those things internally? And automated journeys, they're great. But the thing is with an automated journey, as much as you can set triggers to send an email, as much as you can set triggers to kind of put them down an email automated journey, you could also set triggers and actions for a fundraiser to pick up the phone or to send them a letter. And you can automate that letter with merge fields. So that letter's just generated and there. You don't have to necessarily do those things. You can bring in those manual things that we do, or set an action for if somebody gives a generous gift, and we know that in our appropriate banking and thanking, that generous gift gets a handwritten letter from the CEO. Well, then we just set a trigger that's going to drop into the CEO's diary. That person's given a gift. We need to write them a letter. So it's those internal steps rather than the external steps. And I think there is a kind of an important distinction between those two things. I don't think it's right to close off completely from those, valid and successful terms. Not everyone is. My parents are very digitally averse. They continue to be incredibly digitally averse. Got a text from my mum yesterday saying, I can't log into online banking, I'm scared. It was just because her internet had been turned off at the wall. But those things happen, and those things still exist, and we just have to, we adapt our internal processes to be more efficient, but we don't close off our support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add to what David's saying by just emphasising that it's absolutely not about taking all of your campaigns online. Like, you might have mail outs, kind of hard copy mail out campaigns that work really, really well for you and your supporter base. So it's just about continuing to do what's successful for your organisation, but think about where you can collect data on that journey. So maybe it's recording the responses that you get from those mail outs, and making sure that you're inputting those and being able to analyse that data and get insights from that. So when is the best time to send out that mail out? When works best for you? What have you raised from who? Just thinking about what are the points where you could be collecting data, and how might you use that to inform your decision making going forward. So keeping those fundraising campaigns offline that work really well, but taking the data you can from them and making sure that you have that data set to work with.
Lovely. I'm aware of time, and there's
1 minute.
We have kind of 1 minute left, but I think realistically a sensible thing for us to do, rather than try and launch into an answer that will probably, knowing me, take much more than a minute to answer, is if you have more questions, we are in the expo hall. Please do come and find us all day today. Please come and find us for those burning questions. We'd love to talk to you. It's really encouraging and exciting to speak to you about your amazing causes. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Have a lovely day.